Hi, and welcome to the U World Order Showcase podcast. Today we have with us Joanna Hunter. Joanna is a psychic business coach, creator of the largest metaphysical money experiment ever. It's called the $1 Million Experiment. Her mission is to raise the consciousness and vibration of the planet by activating one human at a time. It is such an honor to have you join us today, Joanna. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I feel like we're just on the precipice of a very, very juicy conversation.
I know. I've been looking forward to this. It's like before Christmas. It was kind of like, "Oh, it's going to be Christmas in January."
I love that.
So I know quite a bit about you. Over the last couple of months, I've just been diving deep into all of the different um, things that you have to share. I hate to call them things. They're just like energies they're so yummy and they just like they shift our reality. So, do you want to briefly tell people how you got started and a little bit of your backstory, and then
Absolutely.
we'll jump into everything else.
So I'm one of these people that didn't come into my psychic gifts later on in life. I was literally born with them switched on. And I thought that was totally normal. Like I thought in childhood it was normal. Like everybody saw the wispy people. And I thought everybody experienced like the trees and the rivers speaking to them. And everybody experienced feeling energy and feeling things and knowing things that, they didn't really have any context to know other than they just felt it deeply in their body and they knew it. And it wasn't until about the age of 3 or 4 that I was like, oh, I'm the weird one. That's what those looks are about. That's what, why some people seem so scared. Like it's me. And I thought, oh, why? Because I thought I was the normal one up until that point. And I thought everybody else was a little bit weird. But then, like the penny, I remember really, it must have been about this probably like the cusp of 3 and 4, the penny dropping and realizing, like, oh, right, okay, other people don't see energy and they don't process the world in the way that I process it. And of course, as a child, the only thing that you really kind of want is to fit in. A lot of children, that's like a big driver for children is to fit in and to be accepted and to be loved and all of those things. And of course, I went down that path as well. So I tried everything to really, really stuff down my spiritual abilities and not be able to like I tried not to use them. I tried to like be as normal, like pretend you're normal, and then I got to about the age of 15 and it was like a champagne bottle that had been shook and shook and shook and then the cork popped. So as I went through puberty, not only did I go through that stage of my life, but also as well my psychic gifts went haywire and I would have like day-long deja vus. I would have just absolute clarity, knowing visions of things that happen in the future, that kind of thing. And that was amongst the normal stuff of like hormones, boys, bitchy girls, all the things, right? Like that you're navigating at that age anyway.
Mhm.
Um, and by the time I was 23, I was newly married. I had two small children and I started my first business. And I realized that I had literally been fighting this part of myself for so long. And I had this love of business. And then I had this love of like spiritual stuff and esoteric things. And I never thought that they would ever like fit together, but I thought I can't keep ignoring the spiritual side. And just randomly, a friend of mine at the time invited me to come to a spiritualist church. And I was hardcore, no, no, thank you. Church is not for me. Um, I'd been booted out of Sunday school at 6 years of age, giving messages to the minister from his dead mother, who was now, in hindsight, looking back, probably telling him off. So that didn't go down well. And I was literally told, my mom was told that I had the devil in me and that not to bring me back. And so, that was kind of hard at 6. And so at 23, had a lot of pressures, young mom, newly married, first business, and this person then invites me along, and I was like, no, no, no. And there's like, it's not like regular church. And I thought, okay, well, I'll go once to humor this person and to see it. And I walked in, and instead of having a minister, they had a medium. And I just sat in absolute fascination as spirit people walked up, put their hand on the medium's shoulder, and I started seeing the transfer of energy, and the medium was giving these messages, and I could hear the messages before the medium was even speaking. And I was just like, holy moly, I'm just in a room full of people like me. Like, this is insane. Like, who knew this even existed? I think after that point, I was so activated. I was just like, I can pretend that I don't have this. And then it just comes out at opportune moments, or I can learn what this is and I can learn to control it. So at 23, I began very shortly after going to a couple of the meetings at the church. I joined what they called a development circle, where they teach you to develop. I think I'd only been going to that development circle for about 6 weeks when somebody discovered that I'd read tarot since I was 15 and was like, can you teach us? And I was like, well, like, I'm self-taught. And they were like, yeah, but you're really accurate. So could you teach us? And I was like, sure, I can. And so that's how I became a spiritual teacher. Really, at the age of 23, I started teaching other people things that I knew. And then and it wasn't like I was hardcore teaching all the time. Like, I had my businesses between the ages of 23 and 26. I built four six-figure and multiple six-figure businesses, and then I worked in them all. And that ended in disaster, because what happened was that I worked so hard that I ended up having a total burnout, where I ended up with multiple organ failure. So every soft tissue organ in my body began failing. I was told to prepare my family for my passing, that I would not survive this. And in that hospital bed, I made a really, really true decision. This is not how my story ends. And I turned to the one place that I always turn to in moments of what I call I hope I can say this word on your podcast, but the oh shit moments,
Yeah.
right? And when those happen, I always used to turn to the spirit world. It was always the source of comfort, the source of grace. I would always speak to my guides. I would always speak to my spirit helpers. And of course, this time it was no different. And I realized that the way that I had been living my life was so out of alignment for me, and that I needed to find a journey back to myself. I called that journey the Get Selfish journey. And when I got to kind of near the end of that journey, although it's a never ending journey, it's a journey that you will be on for life. I wrote my first book, called Get Selfish, The Way Is Through. And it is a journey of back to the self, of learning to get yourself, basically, and learning to heal yourself on every single level. And so after my multiple organ failure, life was never the same. I couldn't work in the way that I'd worked. I sold my shops. I had already sold my partnership for my business, for my shop that I'd had, my shoe shop that I'd had. I'd had a business partnership with that, so I'd already sold that to the business partner. And then I had already got and closed my cafe that I had, but I had three stores, like fashion stores, and I sold those. And I only kept my spiritual events pop-up company, because I felt like, even though I was like really, really ill afterwards, I reckoned I could fake wellness for like 2 to 3 hours for a live event. And I could do all the promotion from the couch using social media, which, like, yay. And so I reckoned, like, once a month, if I did one event a month, like, it would cover our bills and it would be okay. And so, yeah, and so that's what I did. And so from that point onwards, life was really different. And we ended up living on welfare. just to get by. So a benefit system, the UK benefit system, or welfare to my American friends. And it was a very humbling experience to see life from that perspective and see life from that angle. I I am ashamed to say that I used to be very kind of like quite judgy about people who didn't apply themselves, having been in that situation where literally I was so unwell that there was no way that I could hold a regular job. Like, what employer was going to say yes to you if you rock up and go, well, I can work this week because I'm having a good week, but next week all bets are off because my chronic illness might flare up, you know? No one's going to be like, oh, this is a good idea for an employee. So,
Yeah.
so it was hard, and it was such a humbling experience, and I am so utterly grateful for going on that experience because I think that experience taught me more about money than anything else. When you have none and you are worried about how you're going to pay the rent and keep the roof over your kids' heads, or how you're going to afford to, put food on the table and things like that, it is a very humbling experience. And I learned so much. And during that time, I was also really focused on healing myself and healing my body, because the aftermath of multiple organ failure, she was not pretty. It was a lot, and I had a lot of surgeries and things like that afterwards as well. And so then I got to 2015, and that's when I published my first book. And I made a really, really powerful decision that I was not going to be broke for the rest of my life, and that I was going to step up and be my own rescue. And in stepping up and being my own rescue, and it was a horrifying thought to me because I had considered myself quite a strong, independent person, despite the circumstances that I was in. But realizing that I was looking for rescue in all of these sneaky little places, like hoping to win the lottery or land that one big client or do this one thing that was going to fix all the stuff, right? And that was quite eye-opening when I caught myself fully red-handed doing these things. And yet I was telling myself, like, you're a strong woman, like you're a strong independent woman. And actually it turned out, no, I wasn't really. I was just hoping for the knight in shining armor to make it all okay. And so I made that decision. I was going to be my own rescue, and I put everything through the lens. Within 2 years, so 2017, I retired my husband from his day job. I brought my eldest daughter, home from her day job, and she began working for us as well. And in 2021, which was the first year of the $1 million experiment, I crossed $1 million in sales for one calendar year. And so I went from living on welfare to creating $1 million year in 6 years.
That's a phenomenal story. I
Mhm.
have I have a whole bunch of questions for you now.
Amazing. Fire away.
So this is just personal curiosity, but how psychic are your kids? Are they like you? Is this like a genetic thing or is this a learned thing?
So my eldest daughter, Ellen, I call her my baby witch. Although she's like 26. So she has really, really embraced and began to explore her psychic side. She is a phenomenal tarot reader, like really beautiful insights, like really good. And she's less than half a year away from graduating as a psychologist. So
Okay.
she is a psychic with a going to be a psychic with a degree in psychology. So it's amazing. My son, when he was younger, when he was just a little boy, he was extremely intuitive when he was younger. I remember once sitting, and he said he was sitting, he was only about 3, and my son loved technology from a very early age. So he was sitting kind of playing PlayStation, and he put down his controller and he just sat sort of bolt upright, and he looked and he said, John's coming. And we were like, what are you saying? John's coming. And I said, and I turned to my husband and I said, what's he talking about? John who? And Paul, my husband said, well, the only John we know is John from Norway. And it was a friend of ours that lives in Norway. And so Paul then said to Daniel, John from Norway. And Daniel went, like this, and he's playing the controller. So about 40 minutes later, there's a knock on our front door. And we had a quite like a really sort of like really skinny kind of like hallway. So like one person kind of fitted in it. So my husband got up and I got up behind him and he opened the front door and he just went, nah. And he shut the front door again. And then he looked at me and he went, and then he opened the door again while he's still looking at me, ignoring the person that's standing at the door, and goes, please tell me that's not John from Norway. And I went, oh my God, John, come in, come in. And my husband was just like, oh my God. And I was like, well, the boy is my son. So yeah. And then my youngest daughter actually has autism. So she is very sensitive to energies. She's very, very I feel that she's very empathic and very sensitive to energies and things like that. So although she doesn't kind of come out with like direct quote unquote psychic things, she will pick up the vibe and the frequency of a room very quickly. And then obviously because the autism has difficulty sometimes processing. So one of the biggest challenges that we've had with my youngest daughter is really being in school. It's very overwhelming for her. And I think it's just so many energies plus the auditory processing that's happening as well. She hates loud noise.
Yeah, that's got to be really difficult to.
Mm, yeah,
I'm glad that we live in the time that we live in where there's some other options with education. It's not like it was 20 years ago
absolutely.
where, school was like the only way to go. And
Yeah,
schools, I
we
think, are making.
homeschool, but we do know homeschooling. We have really, really, as parents, we have gotten off really easy. So because of where we live, in the north of Scotland, our local, like the local authority run an online school,
Mhm.
um, which that's her school, and so it's amazing. So she has all the teachers that she would have in a regular school, except they do every lesson online, and she doesn't have to leave her home to do it. So it is a godsend. It has been amazing. And it has absolutely transformed our family life because it's so hard when, anybody who's maybe listening to this who's got children with autism and how hard school can be on them. And then you have to make that child go to school every day. You feel like the worst person ever. And
It's like
that
torture.
absolutely, absolutely. And that, they're not loving it. And the thing is with my daughter, she loved, like she loved the learning, but the noise was the thing. It was the noise of the classes, the noise of children moving between class and class, and there was I mean, the schools that we've had have been always been excellent and really, really good and very caring and stuff like that. Like they would let her out a few minutes before class so that she could walk to her next class without the hustle and bustle. But the moment that bell went, there was the full-on noise. And so it was hard. It was really hard for her.
I'm so glad that you have this ability to be able to allow her to still learn in a way that she can actually assimilate the information
Mm,
into her to meet the needs that she has in her life, the way that she's going to live it.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's really fascinating. Um, you did mention that you live in Scotland. I was gonna bring that up for our listeners, which is why the whole John from Norway thing. It's like, what? All the way from Norway? Not like
Yeah.
down the street showing up.
Well, the funny thing is, John is actually
Norway.
from England, but then he moved from Norway, so he became John from Norway.
Uh-huh. So was he still in England?
No, he was living in Norway at the time when he came, so it was really unusual that he would be standing on our doorstep. It really was a like what the hell moment, you know?
Yeah. So what inspired you to start the $1 million experiment?
Well, a couple of things really. So I had set that in 2019, I set the intention of doing $1 million in one calendar year. So it was near the end of 2019. So I set the intention with the universe. And when I normally sit down with the universe, I normally like sit down and have a conversation either through meditation or literally just me directly speaking to the universe and saying, hey, this is what I intend. This is my intention. This is what I would like. Any help that you can offer, greatly appreciate that kind of conversation that I have. So I set this intention. So it was very clean and clear intention that I wanted to do $1 million in one calendar year and impact as many people as possible with the teachings that I have. And so, very shortly after that, in 2019, I had call with a client, and that client was having just a super bad day. Like where you're in a grump and everything, nothing is good, everything's terrible, and you're like, what? And so, this client was in that situation, and she was in that level of consciousness. And because she was having such a bad day, when I'm in session with people, I often channel. And so I'm often either bringing through my spirit team, Skylar, or really just channeling directly source. So this time was no different. And so Skylar, who is my spirit team, then said to me, well, you know, tell her to go and get $1. So this client was in the US. So I said, well, go get $1. And she came back and she's like really grumpy, she's like she's dragging her feet. She's like, here's my $1, like what are you gonna? And it was just one of those days, I wasn't taking it personally. It was just one of those days where she just really life was just really on top of her. And I said to her, I want you to hold that $1. I want you to look at that $1 and I want you to tell me if you took that $1, bought something for $1, sold it for two, then bought something for $2 and then sold it for four, then bought something for $4 and sold it for eight. How many times would you need to do that in order to become a millionaire? And so she says, I don't know, like 5,000 or it was something like that. It was like ridiculously high number. I was
Mm.
like, come on now, girlfriend, come and play the game. So it's like, really, give me a proper guess. And she was like, I don't know, about 400 times. And I said, would it surprise you if it was only 20 times? And so I don't know if you just saw that big
I
orb.
did.
And so it was about 20 times. So I said, okay. And I said, you imagine it's 20 times. And she was like, no way, get out of here. And I said, I promise you the maths will work out. It's 20 times. She was like, how do you know that? And I was like, well, actually, I began writing a book about 8 years ago. And it was called 19 Steps. And, I figured everybody had the $1, so it's really 19 steps. And so I said, and I began writing this book. So I began telling her about what was in this book that I had began writing. Well, she came off the call, and when she came off the call, her energy had completely changed. She was buzzing. She was excited for life again. She was feeling activated. She was like, oh my God, like this is ridiculous, me feeling so bad about my circumstances and my lack of money and everything like that. No, like she was energized and it really activated her. And so I came off the call and I was like, well, we were about like three computers along from when I first began writing that book. So I'm like thinking, is that book still alive on my hard drive somewhere? Because I remember I'd written quite a bit for it, but I didn't know, like I hadn't written loads. So I was like, okay. So I opened my hard drive and lo and behold, I found it. So I had been transferred from like God knows how many different computers since that because it was quite old. And I actually printed out the whole manuscript and I sat and I read it. And I'd actually written 22,000 words. And I
Wow, pretty
thought,
good.
this is really good stuff. Like, really, really good stuff. And that night when I went to bed, I held the manuscript in my hands and I sent a prayer to the spirit world. And I said, show me what I am to do with this, because this information needs out to more people. And I thought about my client that day and how activated she had been at this idea that she could be a millionaire and she was only 20 steps away from it. And so I was really like, show me how I can do that to more humans, show me how I can fill more humans with this hope and this dream and show me. So the next morning I woke up, and before I put my second foot on the floor, I had a complete download from the $1 million experiment. I was shown that this was going to be an online course and an experiment online. I was shown how the branding would look. I was told it would have an affiliate, 50% affiliate program with it. I was shown that it would have 52 lab notes, that it would have 52 podcasts. The original podcast had interviews with millionaires, and I would interview 52 millionaires. I had no podcast at this point in time. So I was like, oh, right. So I'm going to have to make a podcast. Like, cool. Okay. And so everything. And then the thing that like really like felt like a little bit of a solar plexus punch was like, it's going to be $25 for the whole year. And I was like, what? Like, sorry, sir, are you high? You know, I thought I sell courses at like thousands of dollars. Like, uh, what? And so I thought, oh my God. And I thought to myself, could I hold the energy? Could I hold the energy of this? Could I hold the energy of this? Could I sell it and in 12 months' time still be in integrity with what I've sold? Or would I be in 12 months' time totally like, when does this end? Because that, no, like, A, nobody wants to show up and teach from that energy. And B, nobody would appreciate somebody feeling that way about because the energetic exchange has not been good. So when I first thought about it, I was like, I don't know if I can be the person who can really, really hold the energy. So I started playing with numbers and I was like, well, what if 50 people joined? Like, would that feel good to you? And it felt good in the beginning, but by the time I got to like May, I was like, why is this not finished yet? I was practicing in the energy. And so I thought, well, okay, well, what if 100 people join? Same thing again. I think I got to about August with that. And then I said, well, what if, and the number I got to was 200. And I thought, I went through every single month. How would I feel? How would I feel? In December, I was still felt really high vibe. It still felt really good. And I was like, yeah. And then I looked at my teeny tiny community at the time, which was, I had 2,500 people on my email list. And I looked at my teeny tiny community and I thought, do I have, do I have 200 people that want to get crazy with me, that want to try this experiment with me just to see if mindset and intuition, along with $1 million plan, can make you a millionaire in just 1 year? Like, is there 200 people that want to come and play with me in the energy to really, really see? And I thought, yeah, yeah, I reckon I could like say to 200 people, like, come along and do this. And I reckon I have an audience that would fit that criteria. So I confidently and then I gave Spirit one extra stipulation. This was all at the beginning of um at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, and I set the stipulation. I was like, I used to have an employee that worked for us, and she was amazing, but I was not set up. My business at that time was not set up for having other people, and I had far too much stuff in my own head. So I made it really hard for somebody else to support me. And in the end, because this person is such an honest person, she was like, listen, I'm getting paid for nothing. I like to work for my money, so I'm really sorry, but I can't continue working for you. So I said to myself, I said to Spirit, if I can get that lady back and she would come and work for us again, and she can help me with this project, I'm all in. Like, I'm your girl. I'm gonna do this for you. I'm gonna hold this space for you, Spirit. I am going to, lead this to the absolute best of my ability. And so I phoned that lady up just to wish her, because she's a friend of mine as well. So I phoned her up to wish her Happy New Year. And I said, how's it going? And she's like, well, actually, I'm dreading to go back to work because she was on her Christmas holidays. And I said, why? And she's like, my boss is like the worst micromanager ever. And the reason I loved this woman and loved having her in my business was because she can think for herself. She just requires
People.
zero micromanagement, right? And that's my dream. That's my dream employee, somebody who does not require micromanagement. And so I was like, oh, that's probably not working out great. So actually, by the end of that conversation, we had decided to meet up in Edinburgh. And we met up in Edinburgh and we were discussing her coming back to work for us. And I gave her the manuscript and she read the manuscript. And we had a brilliant weekend in Edinburgh together because we are friends and we've been friends for a long time. And we had a brilliant weekend. And she said, I'm in. I'm in. And that's when I knew, right, we were going to do it. And there was so much to learn because all of 2019, I'd spent all of 2019 upgrading my systems, changing how I did things, creating more robust, like back end systems in my business. So, like upgrading the type of website that I had, I employed a cart software system. Luckily for me, that cart software system had an affiliate capability already baked in. And so I realized that I'd been kind of getting ready for this project, but I knew nothing about running an affiliate program. So that was a huge learning curve. So I had to lean in there and lean into the inconvenience and the discomfort of the learning curve. But we figured it out, and I had no idea what it was like to start a podcast. I didn't even know what you needed to do. So I had to hit lots of books. I took a little mini class on podcasts and things. And again, we figured it out and we got it all sorted. So we launched the Into the Light Web podcast. And, we figured everything out. And then on August 20th, I did what's known as in the industry as a soft launch. So a soft launch is when you launch to a closed group of people. So I only launched people on my email list to start with. And then our official launch was the 1st of September for the 1st of January start 2021. So I had quite a few people on the call from my list because I had been bigging this up and saying, like, I am dropping something, like, you do not want to miss this. And the beautiful thing is I have a lot of trust in my community. So if I say that, I don't waste people's time. I don't say, hey, come and buy this, like whatever thing. Like I don't waste people's time. So I built up a good relationship with my audience. So they turned out in force, described the whole $1 million experiment, purposely withheld the price right until the end. And I said, you're probably all wondering how much this is going to be. And everyone was so excited in the inbox as it was already. So the Zoom kind of chat and everybody was so excited and they were like, tell us, tell us. And I said, $25. And the room just went silent. And then they were like per month or like, no, $25, that's it, one-off fee, and you can earn it back. And somebody wrote the funniest thing. It was like, bitch, take my money. And after that, I was just like, that just made my day. And I was just so funny. And I thought, yes. And it was really, and we were just off to the races at that point. Nothing could have prepared me for how viral we went. We went crazy bananas viral. So I made a very rather embarrassing video when we hit 600, remembering I was like, if 200 join, I can hold the energy, no problem. So when 600 people joined, I did a complete Gwyneth Paltrow at the Oscars, full tears, everything, like, I can't believe it. And I was really overwhelmed and just like absolutely so honored that 600 people were wanting to come on this journey with me and get a little bit crazy, put their mindset to the test and see what they could learn or expand into. So it was so joyful and joyous and exciting. And everybody that was kind of meeting us was really, really excited about it. And then we and then we kept going with that. And then what happened was that by the time we got to December, we had 2,000, nearly 2,000 participants. And then the cart was closing on the 31st, midnight, New Year, 31st of December. Um, and it was just going bananas. And then we closed the cart, and me and my husband, we're not like huge fans of the new year. Like we'll take the new year in, but both of us don't drink. So we don't party or anything like that. We just kind of have like a little kind of quiet family type get together. So we went to bed that night. And in the morning, we woke up and we had across all our social media platforms and our email and everything, we had over 50 requests. Please, please, please let us in. Please, please, please let us in. And I'm very one of these people that, I see my word as my bond. So if I say I'm going to do something, I like to follow through. I do not engage in that type of marketing like that we go like, haha, no, actually, we're still open. Like I just lied that the
Yeah,
cart
the
was
whole
closing. Like in my
scarcity
world, if
thing.
I say the cart is closing, she's closing. And so my husband was like, my husband, it was so cute. My husband came down and he said, Joanna, you're gonna have to have a word with Skylar. And I was like, why? And he says, we've got all these people who literally want to be part of the experiment. Why are we saying no? And I said, because I said I would close the cart. And but I was like, some of them are like practically begging here, and they're like saying they only heard about it and now they can't get in. So I sat down and I meditated and I spoke to my spirit team, Skylar, and Skylar said, well, technically week 52 does not start until the 4th, because that was literally the first week because of the way that the new year landed. And we were still technically in week 52 of like the last year for the first 3 days of that year. So I was like, okay, we'll open the card for another 3 days, and 2,300 people joined us in 3 days. And it was crazy. And my team, so this wonderful woman that I'd taken on, and then obviously my daughter, who does our social media, and then my stepdaughter as well stepped in and helped, who had a background. She's actually our OBM now, but she was working for another company, but she was free during that time for the Christmas holidays and things like that. And so my team turned around and they just said, Joanna, just focus on what it is that you do. Get out there, speak to people, talk to people, do what you do your live streams, interact with the people. We got you. We got your back. And don't worry about anybody who's joining the program. We'll onboard them and look after them. So between my team, they just worked in shifts, literally to midnight every single night. And then in the morning, they would wake up and hundreds of people were requesting the group. And and for 3 days, they just worked relentlessly to get everybody into the group. On the 1st of January in 2021, we did the first call. I think a lot of people were holding their breath for the first call, because you've got to remember, because of the affiliate program, we had a lot of human beings who had no idea who this chick, Joanna Hunter, was. So they were like, is this legit? Did I just sign up for a pyramid scheme? Is this a scam? But I've been a spiritual teacher for a long, long time. I know the subjects that I teach inside and out. I teach from lived experience. Not every teacher teaches from lived experience. I teach exclusively from lived experience and what I receive from my spirit team. So it's quite a different way of teaching. And so um the first call, I had 1,500 people on the first call. And after that, the internet went bananas. We literally broke the internet. I think people then realized, like, holy moly, this is legit. We had people in our inbox saying like that call alone was worth the $25. In fact, we had that this time as well. People who've already joined, they were like, that first call, that was worth the $25 alone.
Your book
So,
is worth the $25 alone. Like
oh, thank
just
you.
that.
Thank you. Yes. So there is so much value. I mean, it's jam-packed in there. And, so that went on to become my $1 million year. We did $840,000 cash banked and $1 million in sales because we offer payment plans.
Mhm.
So we did $1 million in sales, and 15 other people, so 16 with me, became a millionaire that year. Then we had loads of people who hit 500,000. We had one person who hit 750,000. And these were only the people who stepped forward and actually shared this with me. So, the question was, can mindset and intuition training, along with a $1 million plan, make you a millionaire in just 1 year? And the answer was a resounding yes. Our first millionaire did it in 8 months in a completely brand new business to her. Her year could have gone, if she had not found the $1 million experiment, her year could have gone drastically differently. She had an eco cleaning business, which meant that she went to people's homes and cleaned their homes. And her and her colleagues, because she had a company, clean people's home with eco products. Great, until the pandemic hit and you were isolating and you can't go to anybody. So her job was done like overnight. She couldn't do her contracts unless there was nobody in the building. So she couldn't do her regular contracts. And so she joined the $1 million experiment, and she talks about reading the book cover to cover 4 times in her interview. She just tried to absorb as much knowledge. She wasn't a particularly woo person at all, so this was all kind of brand new to her. She was just like, okay, I'm gonna take a gamble here. I'm just gonna do this. Like, I'm gonna start trying to listen to whatever that intuition thing is, and she really went for it. And it was amazing, because one morning she is sitting listening to the radio. She's driving her car, she's listening to the radio, and this guy pops on the radio and talks about being a self-made millionaire. So she turns the volume up because she's like, oh yes, I'm in the market for that, so her ears prick up, and she's like, oh, okay. And she listens, and the guy's talking about flipping properties, talking about buying properties at auction and then flipping them for a profit. And he says this one line that just seals the deal for her. And the one line was, really, in essence, what flipping property really is just giving it a really good clean. And she thought, cleaning, I know that. Within weeks of that random radio episode, or not so random, right? Because she was really working the plan. Um, so she had been in the right place at the right time and really listened and not missed that opportunity. She then went to kind of like look into what this guy was all about, and he had lots of free resources and stuff. And she downloaded his free resources and stuff. And she went to her bank and secured a mortgage, and she took a huge risk. And, this is not something that we, say in the experiment, you must take a huge risk, but she was willing to do that. And she took her family savings during a pandemic, with no income, because until that pandemic was done, she wasn't able to go out and do the work that she was doing. So she really, but she said to me when we spoke about it, she said to me it was like a knowing inside her. She just knew that this was it, like this was it. And so taking all of this action, although it was on one level very scary, on another level it was like, I just knew I had to do this. And so I did. And so she bought her first property at auction for £41,000. She'd set herself a budget of 60, so the maximum she could have gone to for that property was 60. She bought it for 41. She put extra money into the property. Her and her hubby, because they couldn't go out to work, they basically really, really cleaned up that property, made it all spruced it up. I think they put a new kitchen or something in there. And 6 weeks later, sold the same property for £120,000. And within 8 months, they had flipped property to the tune of 1 million. And at the end of the $1 million experience, they had actually flipped property to the tune of 1.4 million.
Wow. Is she still doing it?
Yes. and she actually teaches other people how to do it now, which is amazing.
So cool.
Like,
I
it's so
love
amazing.
stories like that. It's
Right.
just
And
like,
she's even been like on a British television show called Homes Under the Hammer. So it's a
mhm.
specific show all about homes that sell at auction. And so she and her husband have both been on this television show as well from that. She's mentoring other people in how to flip properties and grow your money and create financial freedom now. So complete brand new career was like birthed out of the experiment. It was amazing. Like, and it was exactly who I
For
wanted.
$25.
Exactly. Like it was exactly who I wanted to be one of our millionaires. Like I had had a vision in my head of like, who would I like to be the people? Like, obviously, I wanted as many people as possible to hit the goal. But I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was the story of somebody that literally was kind of like brand new to the whole thing, like didn't really and just really just followed the plan, like followed the intuition, right? Which is a big part of the $1 million experiment, learning to tap in and follow your intuition. And for me, I think it really, really, for me, it was that solid proof that mindset and intuition can absolutely make you a millionaire in 1 year. And she said, the $1 million plan was really revolutionary to her. And although she didn't really like follow the plan per se and start at $1, she looked at how could I start a higher level and go faster, which is kind of cool. But the other thing as well, I think as well with like for her, she said that the plan was game changing in the fact that she actually started that year and really said like I didn't believe that I could ever be a millionaire, and I ended the year as a millionaire. And so I think that's one of that was one of the things that I had been on my wish list, that somebody who could go from that we could shift mindset to that degree where somebody could actually see the power of their own mind and see how powerful you really are as a person. And it was amazing. But then we had a bunch of results that had nothing to do with $1 million or money. And we called these the outlier results because they lay out with the remit of the experiment. And those were insane. The outlier results like blew me away. So we had several students that the first student that wrote to us told us that they had been on pain relief, very heavy duty pain relief, for about 24 years for a very serious injury to their back. And that they started having a funny reaction to their pain relief, that they started to feel dizzy and woozy. So they went to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, if you feel dizzy and woozy, it means that it's too strong. So let's start like toning down how much you're taking. And within a month, she was completely off her pain medication. And this happened in the February of the experiment. And so she wrote to me and she said, the only thing I'm doing different is like I'm in your experiment. And I thought, thank you so much for the credit, but like, and like, I didn't say to her, but like, if I wasn't going to pop that bubble, I was like, if you believe that this is my experiment and you're feeling better and you're not having to take pain meds, like, I am not going to burst that bubble. But I was like, I don't know if I can see how this can do this. But she was adamant it was our experiment. She was like, it's your experiment. Like, there's some magic happening here. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to receive that in. And if you feel like that's what it is, I'm not going to argue with you. But in the back of my mind, I was a little bit like, that sounds really fantastical. I'm not really sure if that's, something I can really take credit for. And then three more people came forward. And again, one of them was actually a nurse. She had been a nurse for many, many years. And she had injured her back at work like 12 years ago. And lifting a patient, and it really hurt her back. And to the point where after a while she actually had to give up nursing because her back just made it impossible for her to do the work that she had been trained for. And so, but she was like adamant it was experiment. She was like absolutely adamant. Like, she's like, I feel so different. I feel so different in my mind. I feel so different in my intuition. Like, I starting to transform, and my body is healing as a result of the transformation that is happening to my mind. And I was like, okay. And I thought, well, I'm not going to argue with a nurse because, like, I don't think she's going to be like this. And then I had that proof of that other lady. So I was like, okay. And then another lady came through. In July, we'd had quite a handful of people who had literally said that their bodies were healing through the work that they were doing in the experiment. And then in July, I think the most amazing, incredible thing happened. It was a woman who I knew from my local area who used to come to, like, in my local area, used to do like live events and stuff. And she used to come to those live events, and she'd been to a few of my live workshops in the past. So she had joined the experiment, and to be honest, I didn't really know that she was kind of in there because, like, there was 4,300 people, and I didn't know absolutely everybody by name, and I only sort of knew the ones that were commenting regularly in the group. So it was a bit of a surprise when I got her message. So she starts off her message with that she's sitting in the car park of our local hospital. And of course, I knew this woman. So my heart kind of leaps to my throat and thinks, God, I hope she's okay. Like, I hope everything's okay with her, you know? And she said, I'm in utter shock. I'm in your $1 million experiment. I decided not to apply the experiment to money. I decided to apply what you were teaching us to my health. And I've been so inspired by you and how you've healed your body from multiple organ failure and chronic illness. So I just decided that I was just going to experiment with putting the experiment on my health instead. And so she says, I've literally done everything that you said, except with a focus of money, I made the focus health. And she said, I've just been removed off the organ transplant list. I no longer require a liver transplant. I've completely and utterly healed my body to the point where the consultant says, I do not require any medication. I do not require a liver transplant. And my consultant cannot believe it himself. And she just said, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Like, your work has literally saved my life. And I just, I was so gobsmacked, and I was so blown away. And I thought, wow, like, holy moly. And I think that was a moment that I was able to really receive in what everybody else had been saying to me. You know, like, this is healing us. This is helping me. This is changing me. This is changing me at a cellular level. This is changing me at a fundamental level. Because she kind of reminded me, well, you did that, Joanna. You healed your body from multiple organ failure. You healed your body from not one, but two chronic illnesses and an autoimmune condition. You know, so, like, why is it so fantastical that these people are doing it? You know, like, that you know that source heals, and you're helping people to reconnect with source. And so, like, and then I was kind of like having that kind of third person conversation that you have with yourself sometimes. I don't know if anybody else does that, but I do. And I was just like having those, like, and I was like, yeah, like, the stuff like really, really works. And then shortly after that, our first millionaire emerged from the container.
That that's so inspiring. I'd known about a couple of these stories, but the health stories are, you can't help but heal. Your body can't help but heal when you start getting connected to source. It,
100%.
you
You
had a
know,
comment.
it's a side effect. It's a side effect because source energy is always giving, right? But the problem is, as human beings, is we aren't always receiving.
You had a comment in your, I forget where I saw it, but it really had a huge impact on me when I read it. And it was that you're either tuned into source or you're not. I think of like the light switch plug. You're either plugged
Yes.
in or you're not. The light's not coming on if you're not plugged in. And we have the ability to plug the switch in if we want or pull it out.
Yes.
But just
Yes.
being aware of that.
It's an on-off system. And I think so many people teach spirituality or teach these concepts in lots of gray areas. And in my experience, humble as it is, there is no gray areas. It's either on or it's off. You can't be kind of in alignment. And the confusion is that you can be working on getting into alignment, but you're either in alignment or out of alignment. It's one or the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't be kind of in alignment because while you're kind of in alignment, sorry to break it to people, you're out of alignment, right? Because alignment happens, it's a deal that happens where the switch literally flips and now you're in alignment and now you're not. And what people do is they take those gray areas of like, I'm trying to manifest this, right? Like, so I'm manifesting this. Well, you've either manifested it or you're in the process of manifesting it, which means you don't have it. So you have not manifested it. You can't halfway manifest a thing, you know? It's this idea, it's an illusionary state of being. And because a lot of people focus on that illusionary state of being, like I've had so many clients over the years say to me, but Joanna, like I'm in alignment. I'm like, girl, if you were in alignment, the thing would be here. Sorry to break it to you. Sorry, not sorry, but it is that cut and dry. It is that black and white. But what happens is because imagine if you tell yourself that you're in alignment and the thing that you are trying to align to is not showing up for you. Like, how frustrating is that? Because you're telling the story, I'm in alignment. Well, if you're in alignment, you can't move into alignment because you're already there according to you. But the thing that would show up when you are in alignment is not showing up. So no wonder people sometimes when they're manifesting are so frustrated. And they're like, feel like they're banging their head against the wall. And I'm like, because it's an on-off system. What if we just take a chill pill, take a deep breath and calm down and realize right now, because this thing is not in my life, no shame, no finger pointing. It just means you're not fully in alignment. You can be working on getting into that alignment, but right now, as it stands, you're not fully in alignment because the moment that you're in alignment, delivery happens.
So profound. So do you believe in a reality where everything exists all the time? All of the possibilities continually exist, but getting in alignment is a case of moving into that materialization of the reality where that exists.
Mm-hmm. So Skylar and my spirit team teach us that we live inside a multiverse and that all parallel realities exist, all different realities exist. The best way that Skylar describes it is that there's a reality where you are so stony broke that you are living in a cardboard box under a bridge. And then there's a reality where you are so wealthy that like you are a billionaire. And then every single reality between those two extremes exist in different dimensions, in the multiverse, right? So every single permutation exists. A permutation is a train track. So while I'm currently in this reality, I will go from where I am right now, and my train will keep going straight. And it will end up at a destination point, right? So that's how destination can exist, right? But then when you have destination, it creates a really, really big freaking problem in the human psyche. Well, how does free will work if everything is destined? Well, every reality has its destination, but the free will comes that you are not stuck on the train. You can swap train tracks, aka realigning your energy to a new destination point. And so when we're manifesting, what we're actually doing is we're jumping train tracks into an alignment with a destination point with a favorable result that we desire. And so the train that we're on is going to stop at that station. But the train tracks only go straight. They don't like they don't go through other realities. They go in one reality and one reality only, and you've got to decide, and it's your decision in which reality that you choose to inhabit. So if and your reality is usually based off the stories that you're telling. So if you tell a lot of what we call poor little me, So Poor Little Me is a story. It's an internal story that every single human being has. And it starts like this. Poor little me, and then you fill in your wah 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 story, right? Like how hard done by you are, how awful life is to you in that moment, right? If you tell a lot of Poor Little Me stories, it creates the Poor Little Me train track, and you get on the Poor Little Me train. And then people who are on that train are like, I can't believe this train stopped at Misery Falls. And I can't believe this train stopped at why does this happen to me station. Well, you're on the Poor Little Me train. Like it's the only places the Poor Little Me train go. We need to change, use our free will to change the train that you're on. Switch timelines, switch train tracks, enter a new timeline, enter new dimensions so that you can begin to experience better realities. And so all realities exist all the time. And I mean, that's what I did. The most classic example that I have from my own experience was when I first got into the law of attraction. I literally thought it was like the freaking second coming. Like this was it for me. It was like something was reawakened and awoken in me, and an ancient knowledge that I realize I have taught this knowledge in lifetimes. But back then, I was like, this was just a revelation to me. Right up until I started telling my family about it, and they were like, you really lost the plot now. And so in the beginning, I began to kind of like, quote unquote, fight my family on it, try and, prove my point to them, verbally prove my point to them, which just made them make fun of me even more. And it's not that my family are horrible people, they're very nice people, but they were like, this is
On their own
whacked.
trains
Like
too.
you are out there now, like you wearing a spacesuit because you are like a space cadet right now. So I thought, and eventually I thought, well, why don't I just use a law of attraction to literally change my reality? And so every time that I would say anything about the law of attraction and it would be met with, somebody like them making fun of it or whatever, I would just tell myself in my head, I'm like, I'm so lucky they're so supportive. Right. And they were like full on going, why don't you manifest it? And I would be like, "Ah, I'm so lucky they're so supportive." And I just like that. And I don't know when it happened, but at some point I changed trains, and now my family are so on board with the law of attraction. My eldest daughter is a master manifester. The things that she's manifested is unreal. Even my son is open to it. My youngest daughter is open to it. My youngest daughter is an unbelievable manifester. And even my husband, he cannot deny the evidence. And he's really like, this stuff really, really works. And of course, everybody is living in my largest manifest station, which is a giant ass mansion that I manifested. So it's very hard to deny now. But I really, really switched train tracks from having a reality where I didn't feel like I was receiving the support and I brought to myself a reality where I am really supported in the work that I do.
Would you say it starts with the stories you tell yourself and the visions that you have about the reality that you may or may not be living in?
Absolutely. It is the stories that you tell yourself, like 100%. It's just your stories create your reality. Like you are a sacred creator. In the Bible, there is a translation because obviously, like if we're in an English speaking country, we read, in kind of like if you've ever read the Bible and things like that, and it's something that you're into, in that, what we are actually seeing is a book that's a little bit like Chinese whispers. right? Because it's been our King James Bible, for instance, had three translations before it was translated into English. So English was the fourth translation, right? So like talk about getting lost in translation, right? So when we go back to the original languages, and the Bible wasn't all written in one language as well. That's another misconception. A lot of people think that the Bible was all written in one language, but it was actually written in lots of different languages, two of which were Latin and Greek. And so there was lots of different languages. So one of the things that the Bible says is that, that we are made in the likeness of God, right? But the way that it actually, if there was a more literal translation, it is that we are like him, not that we look like God, but that we are actually like him, which so if you see God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it, as the creator, it literally means that we too are creators and that we are like, and we can do that. The problem is that nobody has taught us how to create. Like, and obviously there's lots of really wonderful people who create amazing things all the time, like artworks and music and all of those things. And that's just one aspect of the creator gene, if you like, but everybody has the creator gene. And so we're creating our realities all the time. The problem is that it never came with a manual. Nobody showed us that we can do that. So through societal conditioning, and because of the way that our brains are orchestrated, we have a negative bias. The negative bias is not necessarily a negative thing. The negative bias is why the human race is still around in 2024, right? Because it's what's kept us alive. Look at that danger there. Oh, that's stressful. Oh, keep away from that. Oh, that's dangerous. That's a negative bias doing its job, keeping us alive. But actually, the negative bias has an impact on when we're creating our reality because we go, oh my God, what's the worst that can happen? Instead of, oh my goodness, what's the best that can happen? you know? And so we often look to the negative and then we wonder, we're like gobsmacked, surprised, like, oh my God, I have no idea why this showed up in my reality. Could it be it was the only thing that you actually gave any attention to? Just a thought there, you know, and and I can jest about this stuff as well, but I mean, I I realize that I've always been amazing at manifesting. Unfortunately, for the first half of my life, I manifested a lot of stress and a lot of drama.
Yeah,
Um,
we're all really good at that.
yeah, and it was all through my stories. And when I began to change my stories, my reality began to change. Your
You can
stories
actually
anchor a
change
reality in.
history by
Yes,
changing your story. And people, no two people experience an experience the same way. Like we'll
yes.
both come away from this conversation totally different experiences. We're here together, we're having this conversation, but it's not the same. And if you change the way that you remember something, it causes the other person that was involved or people that were involved in the event to slightly shift the way they remember it too. So you can
Mm,
make something that was really not that pleasant. You can totally tell yourself a better lie because
yeah.
they're all lies. Not nothing is true and everything is true.
I feel like I always say that there's three perspectives when there's like two people involved. There's three perspectives. There's your perspective, there's my perspective, and somewhere in the middle, there's the truth, the real. But everything that I experience in my life is through the lens of me, and everything that someone else experiences in their life is through the lens of them. The lens can really taint things. It's like, everybody's heard the saying about rose tinted spectacles, that everything looks rosy and wonderful. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, on this planet have crap tinted spectacles, and everything looks just that little bit hard, that little bit difficult, and that little bit crappy. And that is tainting their experience every single day. And yet, it's just as simple as taking the glasses off to change the story.
Yeah, it really is that simple. Joanna, you have just been a wealth of information. I I so appreciate all the things that you've shared with us today. Is there one thing that you want to leave the audience with that you hope they take away from this conversation?
Well, I think this particular conversation, what I would love for anybody who's listening to this to take away is that you can change your reality. It does not matter how persistent your current reality is. You know, if you're really slogging it out, it is really hard, it is really difficult. If you take one thing away from the conversation that we have had today, take away that it is within your realm of capability and it is within your realm of possibility that you can change your reality at any given moment.
We'll leave it with that.